Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're building a highly practical toolkit of common English classroom management phrases. If you're a university educator and you've ever felt like your academic English is rock solid, but your conversational classroom management feels, well, a little stiff, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to break down the exact phrases you need to sound natural, professional, and confident, and we'll do it slowly and clearly so they're super easy to understand and remember for your very next lecture. Now, before we really get going, let's just validate something. Teaching in a second language is tough. It takes immense mental energy. But here's the really reassuring truth. You don't need to memorize an entire dictionary to sound like a native speaking professor. No way. You literally only need to master about 100 to 150 of these natural phrases. It's all about strategic repetition and delivering them clearly. So let's quickly map out our roadmap for today. We'll be covering starting the class, explaining concepts, interacting with students, transitioning skills, summarizing and closing, and finishing up with specialized phrases. Let's jump straight into Section 1, starting the class. You know, a truly professional opening sequence doesn't just start out of nowhere. Instead, it follows a really simple, reliable three-step rhythm. First, you greet everyone warmly, something like, "Good morning, everyone." Second, you introduce your topic with "Today we're going to talk about." And third, you immediately set crystal clear expectations. And that brings us to this specific phrase, which is just incredibly empowering for your students. By the end of today's class, you should be able to, when you use this phrase, you're anchoring their focus for the entire lecture. You're telling them exactly what a successful outcome looks like for the day. Moving right along to Section 2, explaining concepts. Okay, so when you're breaking down complex ideas, like, say, how a specific financial standard improves comparability, you want to introduce your explanation with these gentle, accessible phrases. Think, "in simple terms," or "put simply," or we can think of it as, using these instantly lowers your students' anxiety. It's like you're giving them a verbal cue that a clear, easy-to-digest explanation is right around the corner. Now, in any given lecture, you're throwing out dozens of facts, but there are only a few critical takeaways, right? To make absolutely sure your students don't miss the most crucial information, you need to isolate it. Pause, make eye contact, and drop one of these high-impact anchoring phrases. The key point here is, or what really matters is, guys, it acts literally like an auditory highlighter pen. Because abstract concepts absolutely need concrete anchors. These specific phrases are perfect cues that a practical illustration is coming. When you say, "Consider the following example," or "Imagine that," you're building a mental bridge. You're helping them transition from that heavy, dense theory directly into real-world application. That brings us to Section 3, interacting with students. So instead of just talking at your students in one long, unbroken monologue, you've got to periodically use natural check-in questions. It ensures everyone is still with you before you move forward. A well-timed, "Does that make sense?" or "Are you with me?" goes a long way. It shows you actually care about their understanding, not just about rushing through your material. And here's a massive game changer for classroom empathy: how you handle mistakes. When a student gives an incorrect answer, a stiff translation might have you bluntly saying, "No, that's wrong." Ouch, right? But native speakers use encouraging alternatives. They'll say, "Not exactly," or "You're close," or "That's a common misunderstanding." It validates the student's effort and keeps them engaged, while still gently correcting the facts. Now, when it comes to delegating tasks, you want to flip the script and be extremely direct. Use concise, action-oriented instructions to set up group work. Please work in pairs. Take about 5 minutes. Discuss the following question. And then bring them all back with, "Let's check the answers together." Short, punchy sentences delivered clearly, they prevent so much confusion. All right, on to Section 4, transitioning skills. These structural phrases act as verbal signposts. They tell your students exactly where they are in the lesson's journey and how the new stuff connects to the old stuff. Saying something like, "Now that we've covered this, let's move on to," helps them organize their notes and their thoughts. It maintains a perfectly logical flow. And to sound truly native, and less like you're reading straight from a dusty 1990s textbook, you've got to sprinkle in some conversational filler phrases. As it turns out, or interestingly, these add a wonderful, natural rhythm. It gives your delivery a sense of spoken word storytelling, making the subject matter feel dynamic and alive. Which leads us to Section 5, summarizing and closing. Please never just let the clock run out while you're mid-sentence.
Proactively use these cues to signal that you're distilling the entire lecture down to its vital components. When you say, the main takeaway is, I guarantee every single student in that room will look down at their notebook to write it down. It is incredibly effective.
And for the absolute final moment of your class, deliver this wrap-up phrase slowly and warmly. That's all for today. Thank you for your attention. See you next class. Doing this consistently leaves such a lasting professional impression on your students as they pack up their things.
And finally, Section 6, Specialized Phrases.
Whenever you're introducing complex industry standards, start with this highly academic yet perfectly natural phrase to ground the room. Let's begin with the definition of this concept. It's a clear signal to the students that they're about to learn foundational terminology, so they really need to pay close attention.
And when you're working through complex numerical problems or tough case studies, use this powerful anchoring phrase. Let's walk through this example step by step. Say it reassuringly. It instantly tells your students that you aren't going to leave them behind and that you're going to guide them safely through the difficult material.
Because context is everything, right? You can connect dry theory to reality by saying, from a practical perspective. You can instantly snap their attention back by dropping, this concept is frequently tested in exams. Believe me, that works. And you can map out the broader curriculum by saying, we'll revisit this topic later. It creates a brilliantly cohesive learning experience. So I highly encourage you to take these phrases, practice them aloud, and deliver them slowly and clearly. Remember, it's not about learning an entirely new language, it's just about mastering a specific toolkit. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. But before you go, ask yourself this. If you change just the way you transition between topics tomorrow morning, how much more engaged will your students be?